Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusing, and it's time for this week's Friday Morning GM with my co-host, Vas Larikos. We've been off for a few weeks. Vas made good use of the time.
I did. I certainly did. Good to see you again, Ken. Enjoying the summer. Began a new business venture that I'm excited to tell the folks about at the end of the show.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. And I heard about this already. It's kind of an interesting thing. I would say that much of being a Ravens fan or a sports fan in general, and you listen to talk radio, for example, is complaining about what's wrong with the team currently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just a very high percentage of the things. It's like, oh my God, they just didn't have this coach, or if this player could just be sat on the bench, if we could just get rid of Daniel Faulele, blah, 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 everything would be better. And it's a phenomenon that makes your backups very popular. They always say that the backup quarterback is the most popular guy in town. I don't think that's true in Baltimore, but it is a phenomenon that occurs in a lot of NFL cities. But we want to take a moment today and talk about areas where we're confident about the 2026 Ravens. And we thought we'd go through this. It's a lighter summer episode, so we're probably not going to go the full amount of time we normally do, but we want to get through it in a way. And Vas and I think we each have some differences in this group. But Vas, why don't you start us off? We each made a list of 3 things, and it's position groups that we're very confident about with the 2026 Ravens.
Yes, I must say things are looking up all the way around. I'm very confident. Maybe it's false confidence. Time will tell. But the position group that is number 3 on my list is safety. Kyle Hamilton, the best in the business, the best bar none player at his position. Malachi Starks, I am expecting a year 2 leap, a sophomore breakout from him. I think he could lead the team in interceptions, hypothetically, and I think he will certainly benefit from the upgrades made to the coaching staff on defense. Then Jalen Hawkins was maybe one of the most under the radar bargain, almost a steal type of player. His metrics on PFF were very strong, both against the run and the pass. He has ball hawk ability to him. He had a couple impressive interceptions last season. And rounding out the group is Keandre Jackson, who I think, based on your reporting from OTAs, has shown some ability to play on the back end. Very strong special teams player, perhaps a Pro Bowl type special teams player. And I guess to really round it out is Kayvon Wallace, too, who is an experienced player backing them up. May not have a roster spot for him, but could be at the top of the practice squad.
Yeah, I agree with literally everything you just said. I'll expand on some things a little bit because safety is my number 1 position in terms of confidence on this team. It's a very deep and talented starting 3 with Hawkins, Starks, and Hamilton at the dimeback / slot corner position. The Ravens play a lot of big nickel. I've talked extensively this summer about how it's really morphed the nature of the defense the Ravens play. They play very, very little base defense these days, meaning 4 defensive backs on the field. Almost all of it's with 5, and it's Hamilton replacing a 5 tech, which is great if you can do it because it still presents the opposing offensive coordinator with lots of challenges in terms of how they attack you with the pass on early downs, which is normally a place where they can make some hay. But if the Ravens can stop the run with a big nickel, then other teams are in more trouble with that. And Hamilton is the Ravens' secret sauce on this defense. My one concern about it is that there is injury risk that has presented itself to this group in the past. The Ravens this year, though, have more options to stay with their 3-man alignment with a single injury. So presumably if they carried 4 safeties, which I think is going to be the eventual way they do it, that it would be Keandre Jackson coming in and playing the back end if either of the back end guys are hurt. And it might be Keandre Jackson who comes in and takes over the dime back role. Don't think he'd be a slot corner, but he'll take over the dime back role on obvious passing downs if Hamilton was hurt. So
yeah, his skill set fits that as a dime back perfectly.
Yeah. He's 6'2", 250, huge safety, by the way, enormous safety. But the Ravens are in the enviable position this year, at least if their depth holds up health wise, that they don't have to move Hamilton to the back end out of necessity. which I think is very important. So that's one of the things I really love about the group. You mentioned Hawkins. I think he's a much more natural ball hawk and free safety than Starks is. It's not like Starks doesn't have athletic talent or the ability to read the quarterback or good instincts. He has some of those things. It's just being miscast as a free safety. And that was largely a case of the Ravens, needed him to be a free safety last year. They didn't have anybody else to play the position. They could have presumably put Hamilton back there, but Hamilton's your ace of spades at the line of scrimmage. You don't want to turn him into a queen of hearts, like I always say, by moving him to the back end somewhere. So honestly, Starks, I think, is going to have a better year, not just because he's had a year in the league, which that should help him, but also because he's moved into a position that I think he's a more natural fit for. He's a more of a downhill player. We saw him make some good plays around the line of scrimmage at times last year, and I think he'll have an opportunity to do that again in 26. But also be a robber. Just come down and patrol that area between level 2 and 3, make some plays on the football, and I think he'll be a better fit at that spot.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said, Ken. And that's a good point about Starks being more the strong safety. Single high is not necessarily his forte. So just to put a button on it, I'm very confident in the group. They're the most confident I am of any position group on defense. Shall we go to your number 3?
Well, I want to make one more comment about Keandre Jackson. So we've talked about this a little bit. The Ravens are highly incented to make Keandre Jackson a valuable back-end player because it essentially saves them a roster spot. And boy, the other thing this safety group could do for the Baltimore Ravens, if they could get through with 4 safeties, it means they could keep 7 cornerbacks. And that means they retain 1 extra of the young cornerbacks, kind of an option on that play in the future, which is really valuable. I mean, they if they have to cut Rivers or they have to cut Bilal Kone or something like that because they just didn't have the spot for him this year, they could really regret it. So hopefully they have the spots for the young cornerbacks they want to keep.
Agreed. 7 corners, 4 safeties would be ideal.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, are you ready for my number 3 then?
Yes.
Okay, I think the position. This is really a kind of a change for me. The running back position is one that I think I'm third most confident in, and the Ravens obviously have had a fairly thin running back group the last 2 seasons. Really, since Mitchell was hurt in 23, they've been playing a man down. They haven't had another guy who really could come in and take a bell cow role. I think the draft of Adam Randall solidifies the spot behind Henry. Randall is the first shot they've taken at a bell cow running back since J.K. Dobbins. So that's a few years ago now, and you wouldn't. It's kind of risky not to have that. Now, they took a UDFA shot on Mitchell and it worked out for the amount of play he got. He was certainly a fine running back, but they couldn't really work out what his responsibilities were on special teams relative to his value as a running back, and that was unfortunate. Randall is a very interesting pick with the Bisciotti making it. Do you have any thoughts on that? On Bisciotti being the guy who made the running back pick?
I guess David Mordell made a pick way back when, and Eric DeCosta extended the same courtesy to Bisciotti. A little bit odd, definitely odd, but I think it increases the chances of him making a team for sure if the owner handpicked him.
Yeah, the chances are pretty good. It's he's an odd character who's changed from a wide receiver to a running back, and he is a body that's very much like Derrick Henry. He's a tall, very muscular build, and a lot of vision value that comes with that. He's a good cutter. Kind of reminds me of Cordarrelle Patterson a little bit in terms of his larger, more powerful build that allowed Patterson to convert from wide receiver to running back.
Yeah, good callback there.
What else to say about this? The other thing is Derrick Henry, just an ageless wonder. And I'm kind of surrendering to the notion that he's just a special case, that you've got Nolan Ryan here, in his early 40s and you're not concerned about his fastball at all declining because it's still one of the best. And he's so very different in terms of taking care of himself, in terms of how he approaches the game. I can't imagine the guy ever like being offensive to teammates, given his real soft-spoken nature. And I think he could, as a veteran, he could be very skeptical to new culture being brought in. But I don't think he'd undermine the coaches in that regard either. He's just obviously an outstanding player. And I look at what the Ravens have brought in terms of added scheme with Ledford and the added technique with Eddie Faulkner. I think the Ravens have a really good chance to get even more out of Derrick Henry this year.
Yeah, I certainly considered running back. They probably would have been fourth or maybe fifth for me. I guess a few things that weighed them down in my mind. Henry does have the age, and at some point he will decline. We don't know when. It could be 3, 4 years from now, potentially, but it will happen at some point. He had the fumbling issue last year. Justice Hill's coming off an injury. He should be a good scheme fit for the zone plays when they call those. I am very excited about Adam Randall's upside, but probably needs a little development. And Ali, I sort of consider to be a practice squad level talent. So I think it's a good group, but they didn't quite make my top 3.
Well, absolutely, in terms of Ali. And I think the Ravens have a tough decision to make on their 25th man on the offensive roster. We've talked about this a little bit before, but it could be a 7th wide receiver. It could be a 4th running back. It could be a 3rd quarterback, or it could even be a 10th offensive lineman if they really want to protect talent they have on the roster there. Ali might be the front runner for that spot right now, and it might be all decided by injury sometime before the end of camp. So these things tend to clear themselves up when you have any kind of health problem or anybody who has to start the season on IR. But I'm with you. I don't think the Ravens take a big risk in cutting Rasheen Ali.
Right.
I don't think there's a bunch of teams out there waiting. Oh my God, I'm hoping the Ravens cut Rasheen Ali and we'll pick him up.
Right.
It's
right. No, I'm in the same boat with that. I would probably prefer the way the roster looks now to keep a 10th lineman, but we'll see. Because even if it's not Ali, if somebody does poach him, you can fill that practice squad spot with a comparable player, I think.
So your 10th offensive lineman would be somebody like Bjornson or maybe Quinn as being a
yes, or maybe Pounds if he shows well.
Diego Pounds. Okay, so that gives you an extra offensive tackle. Pounds could certainly be a top of practice squad guy, but he is a slight poaching risk as rosters attrit. That he'd be a guy that somebody wants to take a chance on just as their 4th tackle on a team once they lose 1 or 2 guys.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, Gwen might be a guy too. I mean, uncertainty. We'll get to that later, but yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. So that was my 3rd. We go to your 2nd. What's your second position?
My 2nd is offensive tackle. Might be a little bit of a unique selection here because they don't necessarily have an all-pro type at the position. Stanley is not what he once was. Rosengarten, despite being, in my view, the best offensive lineman on the team last season, did not have a great year. He was pretty comparable, but he didn't necessarily build from his rookie year. The reason I'm selecting offensive tackle is because I think the depth is excellent if Emory Jones is going to stay at right tackle. You have a 3rd-round pick who was a young guy. He's a developing guy. We don't know what he quite is, but for a backup, you could do a lot worse. And on the other side, Carson Vincent has the makings of a good left tackle, in my view. So to be too deep at both offensive tackle spots is the reason why I selected offensive tackle. Really, the depth, Ken.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable group to do it. I'm not so positive on either of the starters that I'm ready to do it, but I'm very excited about the future of Carson Vincent, and I think that he gives them an option that they could move on at left tackle during 2027. So they're committed to Ronnie being the tackle for 26, and they've committed to him financially for 27, as we've discussed on the show before, because of moving his 26 salary effectively into void years. So they don't have an option to get rid of him in 27, but he might not have to play. If Carson Vincent is ready to go in 2027 and Ronnie Stanley has a decline, say, that we see over the course of 26, it could be that 27 is Vincent's year and Stanley is a elder statesman, kind of a backup offensive tackle on this team, and hopefully hangs around and the Ravens have an option, and maybe even becomes a trade candidate, honestly, in the last year of his deal.
That's certainly possible. There's a lot of teams looking for good left tackle, even a decent, even a mediocre left tackle. So that's
Yeah.
a possibility. But I think Emery, just come back to Emery Jones. I think he's one of the best. He has the pedigree to be one of the best backup right tackles in the league. I honestly can, racking my brain, I really can't remember a time where the Ravens had, well, what I consider to be four quality offensive tackles, maybe going all the way back to the Marcha years potentially, but it's been a while.
Yeah, you're right. It might be that far back. And they did have guys. Marchibroda always had a bunch of offensive tackles who wanted to catch the football, and he had three offensive tackles catch, I think, a 1 yard touchdown in his time here. But yeah, they certainly had guys back in that area. They had a lot of size on that line, but they haven't it because it's so expensive in terms of draft capital. Even the like the backup and the developmental guys you get are typically. Um, Inflated in price relative to what you necessarily get. Like Rick Wagner he worked out very well. But other guys who you draft late as offensive tackles, first of all, they might not stay at that position because they move inside. Ryan Jensen is a good example. To end up being a good player, but obviously it didn't end up being an offensive tackle.
Yes.
But you end up spending a lot of draft capital to fill out the backup ranks of your roster, which is not something a lot of teams like to do.
Greg Sinnott comes to mind as a player we thought
Yeah.
had some upside and didn't really turn into much of that.
Yeah, great point. O'Neal Cousins. I mean, we could come up with literally a lot of offensive tackles
Yep.
that fit into that mold. I think that's a good group. I think that's a good choice. And in terms of the possibility of that hurting the team in 2026, I think it's less than a lot of other position groups. I'm not sure that it's going to be the team that produces the group that produces the positive surprise that
Mm-hmm.
completely changes the Ravens' outlook. But if it did, I think we'd have to start crediting Ledford and Scheme and maybe even Faulkner for helping the run game turnaround because of it. Or turnaround is the wrong word because it was great last year, but to be even better.
I could see it potentially being Rosengarten, under Ledford's coaching, because he was under his name's escaping me, the previous offensive line, Wharton, for both
Yep.
years, right? Because Joe D unfortunately passed away during training camp of his first year. So to really
Yep.
get some high level coaching might turn Rosengarten into a Pro Bowl type. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of tough to lash out with vitriol on Warhop, but the Ravens had a great technical offensive line coach for a long time in Joe D, and he helped the early years of Lamar Jackson. What Joe D's contribution to that, along with Greg Roman, were tremendous in getting real results for the Ravens run game. But then, you lose him. Warhop kind of shows out in bold relief, despite the fact that he had a ton of experience in the NFL.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but he got singled out by Steve Bisciotti at the end of the season. Saying, I think offensive line coaches is something we're going to look at, kind of thing. He didn't name him, of course. He wouldn't do that, but he did,
Yeah.
make it pretty clear that he wanted a new guy. All right,
Yeah.
so
Why don't we go to your number one so we can get back and forth?
my number one was safety, so I already said it. I think
I'm going in the opposite order, Ken. So safety was my third, offensive tackle was my second most.
right.
Confident.
I'm going. That's the order I'm going in.
Oh,
So
okay.
we haven't gotten to my number two yet, and then
Please,
my
my
number one
mistake.
is already done. So my number two is probably going to be your number one anyway, and that's quarterback. I am obviously highly confident that Lamar Jackson will be back and producing at a level as a tide rises all boats. This team is in some ways more dependent than ever on Lamar Jackson to do the things that make the team special. You look at all the other position groups. It's not like there's a bunch of bad position groups, but particularly on offense, there isn't a really standout position group after what they get from Henry at the running back position and what they get from Lamar Jackson. It's a bunch of players who you hope are good enough for Lamar Jackson to come back and be the man he's been for making all running backs who play with him better and lifting the passing game and creating extended plays with a wide receiver group. It's not a bad wide receiver group. It's I think a solid wide receiver group. Could be a good one if Bateman comes back and has a big year. But it's a group that's highly dependent on Lamar Jackson. One thing I want to get your opinion on is: are you confident enough that Lamar has not made concessions to age based on the way his season both began and ended in 2025?
I think so, because if you're going to talk about when it began, it was the first half of the Buffalo game before he took that hit from Ed Oliver, and he looked, as agile and elusive as ever. Um, did he lose 5% of his athleticism? Maybe, but I don't think that's going to negatively impact his game. So yes, quarterback is number one for me. You have Lamar Jackson. He's won an MVP both times. He had a new offensive coordinator, so Greg Roman and Todd Monken. Now he has a new offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle. Um, we know what Lamar is. He's Superman. He's in some people can say he's the best player in the league. He's certainly one of the best players in the league. You make a great point about elevating his teammates, running backs, receivers, and I agree with you. Receiver group's probably somewhere in the 10 to 15 around the league range. It's not below average like it was early on in Lamar's career.
Mm-hmm.
He elevates the tight ends. He elevates the offensive line. He really elevates the offensive line, both in pass blocking and run blocking. Um, I'll touch on Snoop Huntley for a moment because I think we saw good signs of him. Last season was his best season. He really pulled out some gutty games in relief of Lamar. One of the better backups in the league, I would say, maybe the best. So you might have the best starter and the best backup potentially, hypothetically. And the other piece is the Declan Doyle piece. So I am really excited to see what Lamar can do with a more spread formations at the snap because I am expecting not quite as heavy formations. We don't have a fullback anymore, right? So that's the tight ends will line on the backfield sometimes, but I don't expect them to line the backfield anywhere near the amount that Pat Ricard did. So it's always kind of been a vision of mine that if they spread the defense out a little bit, Lamar would even have even more opportunities to shred the defense. They can't double mug the A gap. They can't, stack the box with so many bodies like they have in the past. So that's another reason why I'm confident in this group and Lamar and expecting a very big season.
Yeah, that's a real good point about the crowding of the line of scrimmage. And Doyle needs to have a ready set of remedies to that because when Lamar's had tough games, Miami in 2021, right? That was that horrible Thursday night game, I think it was.
The zero blitz game, yeah.
Yeah, the 40-0 blitz game. Yeah, it's been crowding the line of scrimmage. It's given him a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And when last year, particularly in the big win at Cincinnati, the game they won 24-0, they had answers immediately for a crowded line of scrimmage, and Cincinnati had been effective with that in their first game in Baltimore and won pretty handily against the Ravens. They turned that all around. I'm very happy to see that. I hope that that's something Doyle has immediately in his toolkit because I think it's one of the most important things. You can expand Lamar's scheme in a lot of ways, but having the remedy for the things that have traditionally been difficult for Lamar, the crowded line of scrimmage, is in my mind more important. It helps you get out of the things. Lamar will get you out of a whole lot of other situations under normal 4-man rush conditions. He'll give the other team fits. So you really need to know what you're going to do when you blitz, and it's not like he hasn't been successful in those because his overall statistics are so good that he's successful in most situations. But I'd like to really have good remedies for that.
Yes, certainly. So Declan Doyle, I mean, I think the opposition is not going to know what to expect, especially in the beginning of the season. So that's going to play to Lamar's advantage and the offense as a whole. And if you listen to Lamar and Zay at the podium at OTAs and minicamp, they are excited. You could tell, you can just see it on their face how excited they are. They're excited for the explosiveness, and they're saying this. He's drawing up what I presume was route combinations that they've never seen before, and all that good stuff. So I'm very bullish on Lamar and the offense this year.
Yeah, I am too, and you're 100% on the nose about the re-energization that you're seeing of Lamar Jackson relative to Doyle. I think this is a very positive thing. I mean, some of it's there's a challenge in terms of learning new terminology and whatnot, and I think there will be some Lamar is just going to play how Lamar plays. But just the fact that he's engaged in the way he is right now seems to be a very positive thing, and it's they're both the same age effectively. Lamar is maybe a year younger, or 6 months younger or something. And that's that's easier for people like that to relate to each other. Now, on the other hand, if you listen to Declan Doyle speak, the guy's clearly a genius.
Hmm.
It's often mentioned, but he's very impressive at the podium, answers questions very completely, does a very good job. I mean, you could be impressive without being brilliant. Certainly, Todd Monken probably was impressive without being brilliant at the podium.
Hmm.
In many ways, just some people like the way he stuck the card in his pants, and
Right.
and other people, like the way he explained, I want to make the defense defend every blade of grass. But the comment you made about route combinations, I think we're going to see I don't know a lot about what this offense is going to look like, and it's going to be very exciting to see it. But what I would say is, I think we're going to see very thoughtful route combinations.
Yes.
Meaning it's going to be something where you don't as often end up on an extended play having multiple players in the same location on the field, such that you're not really getting value from that. So I think there'll be thoughtful use of it, and they do have a very diverse group of receiving assets
Hmm.
in terms of where to take advantage of defenses. So that's kind of cool. They got a big contested catch winner, which they didn't really have before. They have, Zay is the ultimate one cut specialist who drives defenses nuts. So yeah, it should fit very well with Lamar and with Doyle as well.
Yes, and certainly more eloquent than Marty Morningwig at the podium, no question.
Yeah, Marty Wainwright, the uncompleted sentence of a human being. He's like, I'm sure he's a perfectly great guy. He really always seemed nice. He responded in a very positive way one time when I was asking him about some preseason polling that they may have put in for Nico Siragusa, and he was which is very nice about his response. But he's a guy who very rarely completed sentences, so
Yeah.
you end up with a non
Was he would always say, "Look it." Wasn't that his go to? Well, look it or something. It was, and there was another one too. I can't recall, but he was entertaining. It was funny.
Yeah, great guy, great guy. All right, well, the one other thing that I'm very optimistic about. We're kind of struggling on how to deal with this, but I'm really optimistic about the coaching this year, and there's like multiple layers to this. So why don't you take? I know we're both optimistic about the coaching, but why don't you take one thing that makes you optimistic about this new coaching staff?
Well, I think the innovation from Minter, I already touched on Doyle. I think both sides of the ball are going to have supreme coaching, but Minter, the way he devises his blitz packages and his coverage schemes behind them is similar to McDonald. And we just saw that propelled the Seahawks all the way to the Super Bowl, and they didn't win that Super Bowl because of their offense. Um, so Minter has a proven track record of elevating specific position groups, particularly inside linebacker and the secondary, as long as he has a pass rush. And I think the Ravens have taken strides in their direction of improving the pass rush with Hendrickson and Campbell and Zion Young. And hypothetically, or, well, I'm not even going to talk about Matabike because we beat that horse to death already. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the combination of Minter with the secondary coach, who's his best friend, he has his father on the staff. He has Anthony Weaver, who relates to the players fabulously. He has Mickens. It's a really strong group. I wouldn't be surprised if multiple assistant coaches on the staff become coordinators or even head coaches on other teams in the near future.
Yeah, would agree. It's an outstanding group, and I think they're very well set for where they're going to see the game, how they've already figured out how their communication triangles are going to work between the head coach, somebody on the field. On the defense, I think it's going to be Weaver that's also on the field with Minter, but he'll be able to turn his back on the field and go to the players and scream at the defensive line if that's appropriate. Talk to an individual pass rusher about what's not working, that sort of thing. Relates very well on that level. He's somebody I think, even though he's a little older than some of the other coaches on the staff, he's a guy who players relate to very well. And then if they're going to have somebody like Volker is going to be in the booth, I would assume, because Minter can't be up there, and he would probably like to have eyes from up there to tell him certain things about what's going on during the game. But Minter, as a head coach, to handle challenges and all the interaction with the officials and whatnot, needs to be down at the ground level. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to that. On the offensive side, Doyle hasn't said whether he's going to be booth or ground. He said he was going to try both during the preseason, but they do have other guys. They have Lombardi, who
Mm-hmm.
could be in the booth or at ground level, and I think they have the same sort of options exist for interaction between the two of them and Minter.
Yes, certainly.
All right, so holding back a sneeze there. Sorry. Um, uh, I'll give you another layer of the coaching that I like, and this is one of the reasons why I think new coaches can succeed is that they are very judicious about what elements to keep that are already working for the team. And they don't come in and they change everything. And Kyle Hamilton actually addressed it directly from the podium. He said, if you're a CEO and you come into a new company, you tweak, you re-guide in some ways, but you don't change everything unless the company's completely busted. And I'm somewhat paraphrasing how he responded, but his response was outstanding. And the Ravens have been a tremendously successful team. Most of their problems have been in terms of not winning games either when they have the lead or in the playoffs. Those are to summarize it. I think we'd look at those two things.
Yes.
And it doesn't take a whole new set of paradigms or a new way of running the organization to do that. And I think Minter, because he had some familiarity, and Weaver certainly is a Ravens way kind of guy, is going to maintain a lot of the good things from the Harbaugh era and just change the things that he really believes are necessary. A lot of creativity, big opportunity to completely change the staff, or very thoroughly anyway. They only kept a few people. Anthony Levine is a good Ravens way person as well. But I like the fact that there'll be very judicious pruning of some of the things that used to be done.
Yes. No, I certainly agree with that. Minter is, in some ways, maybe not totally the younger version of Harbaugh because he's a play caller. That's a pretty big difference. But he came up under Harbaugh, right? So he knows that way. Ozzie, to me, the Ravens way, the architect of the Ravens way, and the pillar is always going to be Ozzie. He's the I want to wish him happy Father's Day on because he's really the father of the Ravens, But getting back to the coaching staff, I think they put together a dream team in some ways. I mean, we haven't seen what these guys can do exactly. I don't want to be too confident in the situation, but the way you have some veteran guys, you have some younger guys, you have some innovative guys. I like watching the Wired episode. I believe it's Esposito as a D-line coach and Bauer, or Harlan Bauer,
outside linebackers.
Yeah, the way they were coaching them up, and the receivers coach, I think his name's Colbert, on the details of the routes. Maybe not all coaches are like that, but it really does seem like an excellent staff.
Yeah, that's a great point. In terms of technique, I think the Ravens have taken a real step forward. And you look at the old coaching staff. Joe D was a great technique coach, but I think Joe D also understood how the pieces fit together in terms of scheme. And hopefully, we're getting that as well with Ledford after a couple of years where I think Warhop was a pretty good individual coaching person, but he was less of a good scheme guy. That's my take on the situation, fair or unfair. That might be the case. Hamilton also came out and talked about Mike Mickens and said, he's a real technique teacher. Right. He just doesn't tell you where to be. And when he uses a term like install king, he's really underscoring the difference from a previous coordinator. Mm-hmm. So he's basically not. When he uses a term like that as effectively as a pejorative, then he's telling you something about what he feels is really important about the game. Is these players, myself included, perhaps, really need to be taught technique more than we need to be taught scheme. We can understand the scheme. We can understand where we need to be. But a lot of it is in how we read things or how we take our first step or, what we're doing. And apparently Mickens is very good at that. And as you can see why that might be true in how successful the Notre Dame secondaries have been in his tenure there.
Yes, certainly. I completely agree. Mickens just seems like a rising coach. And just to go back to Ledford, because I haven't really mentioned him, he complements a Doyle who doesn't have play calling experience. He's a younger guy. Great. I mean, he's been around the league for a long time. He's a little bit older. It's just a good mix of talent and age and experience. And they seem very hungry. A lot of fans around the country are probably thinking, why haven't the Ravens gotten over the hump, even made it to the Super Bowl with Lamar? They've had some really quality teams, and I think this coaching staff is motivated to realize that ambition.
Yeah, a lot of dynasty opportunity in what is there for the Ravens. And whenever you have dynasty coaches, by the way, Well, you have Minter and he could be with the Ravens for a long period of time because his age would allow that to be true. And the fact that he coaches the side of the ball is something a lot of Ravens fans have wanted for a long time. That they didn't like the concept of a CEO coach in Harbaugh. I can see either way, but I understand the frustration in losing offensive and defensive coordinators with some regularity when they're good. And that very well could happen with Doyle. Doyle could be a head coach within 2 years.
Within 1 year.
It could
Within
be
1 year, yeah.
It could be. It certainly could be that Weaver is a head coach somewhere else, and no problem at all if that happens. It's well deserved. And also, what it does is it builds your coaching tree and makes you a magnet for the best coaches when you're the guy who helps get other coaches promoted. And the Ravens organization under Harbaugh had a lot of that.
Yes.
They had a bunch of defensive coordinators become head coaches and whatnot, and then they had a bunch of assistants move on to DCs after that 23 season. It's a very positive thing for your organization to be known for, and oftentimes helps you hire back from those organizations at a later date.
Yep. Well, Billick too. Look at that 2000 coaching staff.
Yep.
I think there was 6 guys, maybe 7. It was at least 6, I think, that went on to be head coaches that were assistants on that staff.
Like Jack Del Rio and
Marvin
Mike
Lewis, Mike Nolan.
Yeah.
I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but there was quite a few.
Yeah. It was amazing they could not get Marvin Lewis a job after that season. And then he was still in 2001, had another good defensive year with the Ravens. Then he went on to that really high-priced job with Dan Snyder, where he spent 1 year with the Redskins in 2002.
Yep.
They were the Redskins then, so it's okay to still call them the Redskins.
Yes.
Even though I might make that mistake normally. But
he was in Cincinnati for a long time. Wasn't it?
Yeah, he was in
10 years?
Cincinnati. Yeah, very long time, and it might have been longer than that. Zach Taylor's been there for like 6 years. Was there anybody between Lewis and Taylor? Might have been.
I don't think so.
All right, so it might have been like 15 years with the anyway, extremely successful coach. Certainly, any way you cut it. And if you look back at defensive coordinators for the Ravens, Marvin Lewis was very special. He did it more to adapt to his personnel than anybody else that the Ravens have had. I mean, first of all, they had him for a long time. So they had him for 6 years. And Dean Pease is the only other guy I believe they've had for 6 years. And Dean Pease wanted to play kind of Dean Pease system, is what I always say. Marvin Lewis, it was like, whatever players I've got to somehow mold this into a good defense. And he was very good at doing that. All right, anyway, very optimistic, obviously, on the coaches. Anything else you'd layer in there?
Just put a button on it. I like that they want defense. And, now that we think about it, I was kind of hoping maybe for offensive guy originally, but it is the team's tradition, since Marvin, really. So I'm glad they stayed with that. I like that as the identity of the team. It's a hard-nosed city, in a way, and the division is more offensive than it used to be, maybe, but I like that they won defense with the head coach.
All right. Positive for me as well. Okay, next week we're going to talk about some concerns about this team. So there'll be things we no doubt hit on. Hopefully we don't take twice as long to discuss concerns, because that can sometimes be the case, but we want to be reasonable and balanced on this show as always. Vas, always a pleasure doing this show with you. Did you want to talk about your new business?
Yes, and my pleasure as well, Ken. Good catching up after a couple weeks off. So I have purchased what was formerly known as Dudek's Butcher Shop at 208 Mace Avenue in Essex, Maryland, and rebranded it as Heritage Meat Market. We offer fresh cuts of choice beef, chicken, pork, and some seafood. And our retail hours are Friday from 10 to 6 and Saturday from 9 to 4. So I hope anybody interested in some high quality meats, I guarantee you it's better than what you're buying at the grocery store, can pop in. Otherwise, you can leave a message and we'll have the order ready when you arrive. The phone number is 410-687-1400.
All right. Hope you Vas has spent a lot of years, as most of you know, in the restaurant business, and I've always enjoyed his latest restaurant venture when I went there. So I'm sure he'll be have a very good products for you in I want to call it the meat market, but I don't want what goes along with that as a butcher. But anyway,
Yes.
Appreciate you, Vas.
Thank you, Ken.
Other folks out there, please use hashtag Film Study Mailbag. I've also got a new email address because we have a lot of people from Reddit and other places coming up. We're using filmstudymailbag@gmail.com. Just send your questions to there. You can also, if you want to be on a film study short, that's the place you should send your questions. That mailbox will be monitored, and I'll be able to get back to you very quickly if you have ideas. But I look forward to you. Want to thank the Reddit community in particular and just their outstanding contributions to this show recently, but also all the regular listeners. You guys, the ones who never went through Reddit and maybe came from RSR or other boards out there. Thanks so much for your very loyal listening and all the contributions you make on air to the show as well, and including both questions and appearances. And I want to maintain that as we move forward, and appreciate you very much. For Vassarikos, this is Ken McKusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next week on Friday Morning GM.
This episode sponsored by Minky Couture. Fair warning, bring a Minky Couture blanket home and it may instantly become the most wanted seat in the house. That's the magic of Minky Couture. Minky Couture created the original soft Minky blanket, trusted for premium quality and custom styles. One touch and movie nights, naps, and cold mornings suddenly revolve around who got to it first. Shop now at minkycouture.com. That's Minky, M-I-N-K-Y, Couture, C-O-U-T-U-R-E.com. Go to minkycouture.com and get your Minky Couture blanket now, before everyone in your house claims it is theirs.
When maintaining your daily wellness rituals is important to you, the change in routine during the summer can feel daunting. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual, even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and much more. So you'll be fueled and ready for wherever life or your summer adventures take you. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. But you can try it for yourself because the variety pack includes all 6 delicious fan favorites: chocolate, vanilla, chai, matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry. So instead of worrying about sticking to your daily ritual, simplify it with Kachava. Go to Kachava.com and use code FITNESS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.